listener production.
Hi, Holly Mitchell with you, filling in for Natarsha Belling. Welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in today's deep dive, the government's calling a freeze on the tax of draft beer a win. But how much is it really saving us? And could Australia's world-class nightlife be taxed out of existence? But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Wednesday, the 6th of August. A 20-year-old Sydney man has become the first in Australia to be charged with supplying nitazine, a synthetic opioid hundreds of times stronger than heroin, after allegedly lacing vape liquid with the deadly drug. New South Wales Police have described the case as a disturbing evolution in the illicit drug trade. The man is accused of running a sophisticated distribution network between March and July this year, facilitating around 1,200 transactions and exchanging at least $500,000. The investigation was sparked after several people presented to hospital with suspected opioid overdoses, unaware of how they had ingested the drug. The scandal surrounding Jeffrey Epstein has deepened with the release of previously unseen letters and photographs published by the New York Times. The letters, written by high-profile figures and compiled as a birthday gift for Epstein in 2016, shed new light on the disgraced financier's vast network. In one, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and his wife called Epstein, quote, a collector of people, writing, "There is no limit to your curiosity. You know everything about everyone." Filmmaker Woody Allen reminisced about Epstein's dinner parties, calling them, quote, always interesting, and attended by politicians, scientists, magicians, journalists, even royalty. The Times also published photos from inside Epstein's 7-story Manhattan mansion. Among items depicted are a taxidermied tiger in his office, surveillance cameras in his bedroom, and a first edition copy of Lolita, a novel about a man's sexual abuse of a 12-year-old girl. Framed pictures throughout the mansion show Epstein with Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as with Pope John Paul II, Mick Jagger, Elon Musk, Fidel Castro, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. And a lawyer for Sean Diddy Combs has confirmed the disgraced hip-hop mogul is seeking a pardon from the Trump administration. In an exclusive interview with CNN, Nicole Westmoreland said the legal team had reached out to President Trump and had conversations in reference to a pardon. When contacted by CNN, the White House said they would not comment on the existence or non-existence of any clemency request. It comes after the US president indicated on Friday that a pardon for Combs would be unlikely.
I was very friendly with him. I got along with him great. But when I ran for office, he was very hostile. So, I don't know, it's more difficult. It makes it more, I'm being honest, it makes it more difficult to do.
But more likely a no for Combs,
I would
sounds
say
like.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Combs was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, but acquitted of the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking last month. He is due to be sentenced on October 3rd. Now it's time to get into our deep dive. This week, the government announced a 2-year freeze on the twice-yearly increase to the draft beer excise, a move it says will ease cost of living pressure and support pubs. But the freeze will save just 18 cents on a 48-litre keg of mid-strength beer and cost the budget $95 million over 4 years. Meanwhile, the spirits industry has been left behind, with the excise on spirits to rise again up another $1.67 per litre, making it one of the highest alcohol taxes in the world. Natarsha Belling spoke with Mick Gibb, CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association, who has a stark warning about the flow-on effect this tax regime is having on small bars, hospitality workers, and Australia's live entertainment scene.
Mick, thanks so much for joining us. There's some great headlines around at the moment. The federal government is giving a win to Australians who love drinking beer. But as we know with many stories, the devil's in the detail. So it's in effect this week. Tell us about the excise. So it's being frozen on some beer.
Yes, you're right. So it's been frozen for draft beer, which is beer that comes through a tap in a pub. So when you go up and you see the line as taps, that's what's getting frozen. And that's great news. That's great news for pubs. That's great news for clubs and for venues that have taps. But what we're missing out on is the huge amount of venues that don't have taps, because the spirits excise, so the amount of tax that's paid or excise that's paid on spirit, isn't being frozen. It's only being frozen for draft beer. So what has been created, in effect, is a two-tier tax system. So one side of the coin gets excise relief, the other doesn't. And the ones that aren't getting it are typically your really small to medium-sized businesses. These are individual operators who might have one or two venues under their belt, doing it really tough at the moment, going, well, where's the relief for us? We're not getting a bit of breathing room to try and recoup what's been a really tough period through the pandemic and post-pandemic to now just going, God, we're getting slugged again and again and again. So it's created a really tough dynamic for business.
So, Mick, in regards to this being frozen, this tax excise, when you break it down, it only works out about 10 cents, is that right, per draft beer?
It's very small per draft beer. It's not a huge amount of relief that will come through for consumers. For businesses, it's a welcome relief. But the way to think about this on the spirits side, right? So what it's gone up to is just shy of $106 per litre of pure alcohol. So if you have a litre bottle of gin, and in that litre bottle of gin, it's 40% alcohol, the amount of tax that you'll pay on that bottle, just pure excise before you'll get any input cost, is in excess of $40, which is just staggering. Right? That puts us in one of the highest excise rates in the world, which, considering how many great distilleries we've got, how many award-winning small bars and venues we have, we're just doing ourselves a disservice by having this completely uncompetitive and unsustainable taxation regime.
So this tax has really been in force since the 1980s, Mick, and has gone up every year in line or sometimes higher than inflation. How is this still effective?
The fact of the matter is it isn't. So it's, as you pointed out, it's been around since the mid-1980s, and every 6 months it goes up. So it goes up twice, and it's typically around February and August. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics will release CPI figures, and then the excise increase will go in line with that. So the most recent one has gone up, which we've had for beginning of this week, has gone up by $1.67. So we're now at $105.98 per litre of pure alcohol, which is just insane when you think about that excise rate.
Now, we're not promoting the consumption of alcohol at all, Mick, here. We're talking about the fact that there seems to be this unfair tax that is not only basically killing small business, which is the heart of our Australian economy, but making it unaffordable for so many people actually to go down and support their local business. So what are you seeing with people coming in saying, if they're on an average wage, they just actually cannot afford to go out and have a drink?
It's really interesting, and there's so many flow-on impacts of this, aside from people drinking. So there's, for the venue operator, what it means for them is they have to rethink, how many staff will I put on tonight? Can I afford to put on an extra staff member to improve the customer experience, to keep things flowing quicker through the venue? Can I afford to put on the artist and the live performance and the live gig? Probably not. So they cut those things back. And what that means is that the experience for the end user, and I guess Australia's positioning globally as a nightlife hub, as somewhere that's vibrant and exciting, it's impacted because we're not able to have those kind of, I guess, proving grounds and those incubators for live performers and live artists to come through as well. But similarly, we're not giving the opportunities for young people to go out and work in hospitality venues because they're just so difficult for the venue operator to be able to cover those costs when they're dealing with such a high level of excise. It's really kind of flowing through, making really tough situation.
So, Mick, if I go into a local venue to support my local business or to catch up with family and friends, and I'm paying in some circumstances $10 or $12 or $15, I've even seen stories in some venues $20 for a schooner, or if I'm paying $26 for a cocktail, how much of that is actually going in tax? Because some people may incorrectly think, oh, the venue's taking this, they're hiking up prices, but that's actually not the real story.
So it's using a cocktail. It depends on what the arrangement is that the venue has with their suppliers as well. So it's hard to give you a definitive amount. There are a lot of inputs to this, but what we've got, the situation we've got is that the government has an input cost that's entirely at their discretion as to whether they put that on to venues. So with that excise, if they chose to freeze that, that would mean that operators have one less input that's increasing in cost every 6 months. It gives them some breathing room. So instead of adding, whether it's $1, $2, whatever it may be, onto the price of that cocktail based on their input costs, they'd have some breathing room. It's one less factor that goes to increasing the price of a drink. So if the government can give a freeze, and the freeze is the important piece here, give a freeze so they've got some breathing room. And then let's think about, is this taxation fit for purpose? And the argument would be that it's clearly not. It's putting a handbrake on the industry. It's making it incredibly difficult for them to operate. Getting into the nerdy side of it, but at the end of last year, the government did a parliamentary inquiry into the food and beverage manufacturing in Australia. One of the key recommendations of that report, which is called Food for Thought, was all about doing a review into Australia's alcohol taxation regime and alcohol industry. Because in that report, it recognised we were missing some of these significant economic opportunities and the flow and impact that has to consumers. So the price of cocktail, for instance, the price of a beer when you go to the pub. All those different aspects kind of flowed through. And there was this recognition that we need to have a full review to understand, well, this isn't fit for purpose, but what would be a good solution? What would be a good situation that would make us globally competitive? So it's hard to say how much you're going to spend specifically venue to venue because each venue will have its own thing, but we know that the government is in control of this excise regime and that they have the ability to remove that burden, not just on the patrons, but on the venues as well.
We know across the board, Mick, there's been a big conversation about an actual complete overhaul of the very outdated tax system within Australia. That's all different types of taxes. So on the front line, as a small business owner, you're seeing firsthand what's happening here. And, there is a school of thought. It is killing, as you just said, local musicians. It is killing hardworking small business. What would you like to see? What do you think is a fairer tax?
That's a really good question. I think we need to have a full and frank discussion about the role that taxation plays in this space. And are we making ourselves uncompetitive to the rest of the world? And then let's look at the role that alcohol plays within the nighttime economy. And then let's think about where the nighttime economy plays in the broader Australian economy and our role as a tourism destination, a tourism hub. And similarly, our ability to attract skilled workers, talented people to come and work and live in our country. It's all well and good if you're in Sydney to have beautiful beaches. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not enough to make people want to live here and stay here and come back here time and time again. You need to have vibrancy and you need to have culture. And a key part of that and that ecosystem is nightlife. So if we've got a taxation system that is punitive and is punishing venues and making it incredibly difficult for them to operate, our ability to be globally competitive is hindered. So we need to think about what role tax should play in this. Well, everyone recognises that we need to pay tax in some shape or form, but it needs to be in a way that isn't making us at a competitive disadvantage to the rest of the world. What's truly fascinating about Australia is despite the handbrakes that we have on us as an industry in the nighttime economy, we have some of the best ranked bars in the world. So in Melbourne, you've got Caretaker's Cottage. In Sydney, you've got Cantina OK, maybe Sammy. These are listed in the top 50 bars in the world. It's pretty impressive that despite all odds, these venues are able to kind of compete globally despite the handbrakes that have been put on them.
And just finally, Mick, one may argue, look, is this about promoting, as we said earlier, the consumption of alcohol? It's actually a much bigger conversation than that, isn't it?
It is. Alcohol is and will play an important role within the nighttime economy because people want to go out and enjoy a drink. I think what we saw during COVID was when people didn't have that ability to go to a third space, so not just a workplace, not just home, but a third place to go and socialise and convene together and share stories, share culture, share ideas. It's a really important thing. But these businesses need to have a mechanism to be able to afford to stay open. Rent's not cheap, especially commercial rent. So these venues and the role alcohol plays in it will always be there. But this is about so much more than just can you sell a drink? It's about can these businesses afford to keep their doors open and be that space that exists for community to come together and for artists to get their first kind of foot in the door and first opportunity. Really, it's much bigger than just can we sell drinks?
We really appreciate you giving us an insight and breaking this all down. Mick, thanks so much.
Thanks, Tash.
That was Natarsha Belling speaking to Mick Gibb, CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association. That's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love for you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram @The Briefing Podcast. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Holly Mitchell. Thanks for your company.